So my topic is, what is a good life? Of course, people can say that it's a very specific question. It's very particular to each individual. But are we sure about that? Are we really sure if we know what a good life is? That's partially connected to the particular idea that I'm sure all of us hold. Like, I'm sure each one of you can imagine how you could make your own life somehow better, or how your life could somehow become worse. Either way, there is a certain change in the, let's say, situation. But is it possible that you can try to make life better and better and better, eventually reaching like a stable status of a good life? Or maybe is it just about reaching these short moments in life where you're truly happy and then falling back into mediocrity of everyday life? Before we delve into these particular questions, I'd like to present to you certain views about what a good life is that have arisen through history. Unfortunately, because so many different views have arisen concerning this, I'm going to focus on only a small group, but I think that their particular views would be pretty much very significant due to they being pretty much present in our everyday lives, or maybe just their influences. So let's first assume that a good life is a happy life. I know what you are thinking, that, oh, Piotr, wouldn't it be kind of silly if a good life was unhappy? Well, as you will see later on, well, there are certain thinkers that think otherwise, that actually a good life is a life full of hardships, sadness, and, well, pretty much hard work. But let's focus on the happy part for now. So, pretty much this idea of the good life is a happy life is very, very old. But one of the first people who started writing about this topic was Aristotle. Well, unfortunately, I haven't read Aristotle, so I wouldn't exactly know the details of what he's saying. So I'll try to summarize what I did manage to learn by reading the first book of Utopian ethics so far. Basically, a good life, according to Aristotle, of course you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, is life that is pretty much purpose. That's a life that you're pretty much dedicated to a particular aim in life, let's say a particular profession, and you strive for excellence in that particular profession. Of course, this is a life that is also has certain minimal requirements, let's say, that you have a sufficient amount of food, sufficient, let's say, bringing up, a good environment. Sadly, this also asks a question to Aristotle, that pretty much he claims that it's not just following these particular aims, these particular things you find meaningful in life that makes life happy, but it's also due to pretty much circumstance in many cases. It is a pretty common view as well now that a lot of people try to excuse or explain their feeling of despair, that their life is meaningless, that their life is unhappy, mostly because of circumstances. It's hard to argue against that. And if you're a determinist like me, you can see the hopelessness of the situation in many cases. But since I don't have much to tell about Aristotle, I'll move on to something that I do have a lot more to tell you about. Stoicism. Stoicism has a particular plan how you can lead a happy and full and fulfilling life. And that advice is you should go with the natural flow. Of course, not in the modern sense that you should just do whatever you want or just ignore the circumstances. It means more of it means being pretty much at peace at what life throws at you. Various challenges, difficulties. should try to take them on with calm and patience. Another important aspect of Stoic advice, let's say, regarding a happy life, is that you should not become too attached to many, many worldly things, like wealth, even people. Why? Because if you become attached to these things, and these things somehow get taken away from you, which is pretty much probable, especially with people. All people die. It's a very human thing. You become attached to people you know throughout your life, then they die. You feel despair, sadness. For many people, their life becomes meaningless. And so it's pretty much say that you shouldn't pretty much try to become too attached to these things in order to avoid that pain. Of course, the Stoics also say that a life has to be pretty much full of self-discipline in order to be a happy life. Determination, courage, but also simplicity and humbleness. Some of you might think, of course Jesse knows this very well, that this sounds pretty much like some of the Christian traditions in a way. As in, pretty much in the Judeo-Christian tradition, various religions do promote certain ways of life by which people are to find happiness, of course. Of course, in regards to religion, it is a bit different type of happiness, specifically of the Judeo-Christian religion. But I will come back to this shortly, because now we have to move on to the other big idea of how to lead a good life that stems from ancient Greece. That would be the Epicurean idea, or pretty much a hedonistic lifestyle. That is a life that is pretty much oriented towards maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain in one's experiences. Well, it's not that simple, of course. Of course, modern hedonism is usually identified with this very simplistic analogy, but it's a lot more complicated than that, as Epicurus writes. It's not just about, maximizing pleasure and pain. It's also about maximizing pleasure in the long term, and minimizing the pain in, of course, the long term as well. But yeah, that's pretty much how he puts it. It could be said that pretty much life can be seen as that in many circumstances even today. When we are put in certain circumstances, we will usually pick the decision that is more pleasurable. This is also how we tend to make bad judgments when we decide to take the path more pleasurable, that is pleasurable now, but has dire consequences later on. So far we have, let's say, the Aristotelian view of how to achieve happiness. That would be a dedication to one's profession, to one's purposes in life. A Stoic one, which says that we should pretty much accept what life tosses at us and try not to become too attached to the aspects of the everyday life, especially the material things, to avoid the pain that is associated with losing it. And the Epicurean view that says that basically we should treat our life as a certain abstract mathematical equation in which we try to maximize the pleasure and minimize the pain. That's basically all concerning the ancient Greek line of thought. Now I'll come back to what I was saying earlier, specifically certain religious views concerning a happy life. I will not only talk about Judeo-Christian religions, of course, but religions bring up an interesting topic: afterlife. Afterlife, and afterlife being more important than this life. So this basically begs the question: if the afterlife is more important than this life, should we really pursue this selfish happiness, pursuit of happiness in this life? Or should we dedicate this life for that life to be better? That's what pretty much religious views on a good life are. Lives should be dedicated towards achieving that better afterlife. It can even be seen in some Asian religions, specifically the ones that include reincarnation. You're living this life to later be reborn in a better reincarnation, at a better station, a better life. So it all goes down to this, that your current life becomes work for the next life, so on and so on and so on. Not a very prospective thesis that tries to promote the happiness or a good life in this life, although it does work for a lot of people. And they do find happiness in pursuing this particular ideal. Well, basically, this idea basically is present still in many societies and will be for a long, long time. So now let's move on to So this view has been polished and shapen through various thinkers during the Middle Ages, specifically Thomas Aquinas as well, and various Christian and Muslim scholars as well. Most philosophers of this period didn't exactly deal with this issue per se, but this is, at this point, various ideas of perfect societies started to rise, of utopias, basically. Basically, one of the most important texts of that particular period, 16th century, would be basically the New Atlantis, a book written by
Bacon?
Yes, Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon, which is pretty much a text that describes a perfect society. Well, utopia basically means a place that does not exist, but it did come to mean a society that is perfect, in a way, or really, really awesome, confess. But anyway, the idea of the utopia also had a certain aspect that dealt with the happiness of individuals living within that utopia. And these views vary. But usually the common theme was about teamwork, involvement, that basically every individual in a given society in utopia is involved in some meaningful way. But I will come back to more details of particular utopias after this. Because with the Christian thought came another idea concerning how to lead a good life. And that is, well, not just Christian, of course. Sorry for being very ethnocentric. Is that a good life is pretty much a life that is dedicated to others, leading an altruistic life, centering your aims, your objectives in life, to helping others, for living for your family, your friends, being involved. That's what gives real happiness. Wolfgang Goethe, yes, in his book Faust, which is, I'm sure, some of you maybe heard about, which is pretty much a book in which the individual Faust makes a deal with the devil. I'll give you a short summary after which I will explain how is this connected to what I was just saying about an altruistic lifestyle. Basically, the book starts with the character Faust being of advanced age, having dedicated his whole life trying to find knowledge, wisdom, understanding, kind of like what we're doing. And at one point he realizes that science has failed him. He had spent all of his life studying this, and it has failed him. His advanced age feels that his life has always been wasted. So he starts turning into